This digital marketing and customer service strategist has been an advisor to more than 700 brands, including Nike, the United Nations, and 32 Fortune 500 companies. The mastermind behind 5 multi-million-dollar ventures. The co-host of the Social Pros podcast, a New York Times best-selling author and certified speaking professional, Jay is a big believer in the power of marketing and messaging. And now he's ready to share his wisdom with you. Please welcome Jay Baer.
Hey everybody, I am in fact Jay Baer, and among other things, I have a history of unconventional choices. I bought this suit on purpose. I collect tequila, not wine. I moved from here, from Scottsdale to Indiana on purpose. I once sold the domain name Budweiser.com for 50 cases of beer. It's a history of unconventional choices, which is why I am so delighted to be here, because Advisors Excel also has a history of unconventional choices. Like, I get the chance to do this all the time, and I don't know if I've ever seen an organization that treats its people the way this organization treats you. This is an absolutely extraordinary event. Let's hear it for everybody at Advisors. It's awesome. I want to be an MVP. Like, I want to have a picture out there on the wall. And I actually could have been. My dad was a financial advisor for more than 30 years. So much so, when I was still in the incubator, he sold me a universal life policy, which was, you can never start too early, is my counsel. Also, the other thing that's really noteworthy in sort of the unconventional choice of advisors is the commitment to philanthropy. It is unbelievable, super fired up that this year's beneficiary is Make-A-Wish. My best friend's son is a Make-A-Wish kid, so I'm really delighted that that is your charitable organization this year. I can't make it to the auction tonight, but if it's okay with you guys, with Cody, I'm in for $1,000 right now for the organization. It means a lot to me, so thank you all for doing that. So I don't know everything, but I do know this. Everybody here wants to grow their practice. That's why you are here. But I've also discovered that the very best way to do that, the very best way for you to grow your AUM is for your clients to do it for you. Now, of course, there's other things we can do. We can do seminars, we can do Facebook ads, we can do skywriting, we can do a lot of other things, marketing automation. But there's a saying in business that I like a lot. It's not entirely true, but it's true enough. And it says that advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. And what we're going to talk about today is how to, as Cody said this morning, maximize your profits by turning your clients into your greatest marketing force, to turn your clients into the ultimate sales team. Now, this is more important than we perhaps recognize, and to prove that to you, I'm going to need a little bit of help here. Where's Delilah? I think she's where's Delilah? She's out here somewhere. There she is, right here. Let's hear it for Delilah. Come on up here, Delilah. All right, Delilah, we're going to do a little word of mouth quiz. Tell everybody where you're from. Come over here. Delilah, tell everybody where you're from.
Los Angeles.
From Los Angeles, California. We're going to do a little word-of-mouth quiz. There's an alpaca on this slide. My new book has alpacas on the cover. Are you ready for the first question? Sure. Okay, first question. What percentage of purchases are influenced by word of mouth? 35%, 45%, or 50%? We all help Delilah. Shout it out. What do you think? All right, you've heard their guesses. Delilah, what is your answer?
45%.
You heard them all say 50, right? But yet, Delilah is a free thinker, ladies and gentlemen. That's why she's been selected. They are right. It is 50%. Delilah. All right, next question. Many of you operate as if you were in business to business. That's one of the interesting things about this industry. Even though it's consumer facing, a lot of the dynamics in your world are actually similar to B2B dynamics. What percentage of business to business purchases are influenced by word of mouth? 75%, 80% or 91%? What do you all think? That seemed less certain. Delilah.
Get a lifeline? 80%.
She says 80%. The answer is 91%. Delilah, that was not the best performance I've ever seen. However, because you are so willing to participate, I'm going to give you a very special gift. It is a non-life-sized alpaca, ladies and gentlemen. Delilah, that is for you. Thank you so much for playing. I appreciate you very much. Great job. Delilah, ladies and gentlemen. Later tonight, we will saw her in half. 91% influenced by word of mouth. New research just came out on Tuesday of this week that said that word of mouth is the single most persuasive way that people make decisions. Number one. Yet, here's the amazing thing. Essentially, no one in this room has an actual word of mouth strategy. And that's a bit of a puzzle, isn't it? Because we have a marketing strategy, a seminar strategy, maybe a social media strategy, possibly a local public relations strategy. Certainly we have a number of financial strategies, yet nobody has an actual word of mouth strategy. We just take it for granted. We just assume that our clients will talk about us. But will they? And if so, what are they saying? Are we actually giving them something to say? The mistake that most of us make is thinking that competency creates conversation. That if we just run a really good practice, our clients will naturally tell their friends. But that's not actually the way human behavior works. We don't talk about good because we expect good. Same is lame. What people notice and talk about are the things that are different from their existing expectations. And some of this is just science. Some of this is just how we are wired as human beings. We are wired to discuss things that are different and ignore things that are average. So if you want your clients to tell their friends about you, and you do, you have to make a choice to do something different in your practice that your clients actually notice and actually talk about. Clap your hands if you've ever been to the Cheesecake Factory restaurant. Weirdly, the front half of the room has all been to the Cheesecake Factory. Back half, also the thinner half, has not, which is curious seating pattern. Did you know that Cheesecake Factory spends 5 times less on advertising than any other restaurant in their competitive set? They spend hundreds of millions of dollars less per year than many of the other chains in that same price point. Hundreds of millions of dollars less. Talk about maximizing your profits. How do they do this? They have made a decision to do something that people notice and talk about. Here's a tweet about just that. My daughter said her English class requires 1,000 pages of summer reading, so we went to the Cheesecake Factory and I handed her a menu. True or false, the Cheesecake Factory menu is enormous. True, it's ridiculous. How enormous is it? Great question. I had my intern permanently borrow a Cheesecake Factory menu. One of the many reasons I'm looking for another intern. It turns out I had her then count the words, 5,940 words in the Cheesecake Factory menu. My new book about this topic, 53,000 words. Cheesecake Factory is 15% of a business book. They make chicken, and this is 100% true, they make chicken 85 different ways. That's just stupid. There's no need to make 85 kinds of chicken. But they do it because it is so outside your frame of reference that you notice and tell people about it. Now you might think, oh Jay, yeah, that's kind of a funny story. Cheesecake Factory has a big menu, but that doesn't build their business. Oh my friends, it absolutely does. I did a big research project when I worked on this book. We surveyed hundreds of Cheesecake Factory customers. Turns out 38% of them have, without being asked or prompted or aided, told a story about that menu to somebody else. Now, I ask you a simple question. If 38% of your clients told their friends about working with you, what would that do to your business in 2019? How would that maximize your profits? And if a company the size of Cheesecake Factory can do it, you absolutely can do it. What the size of that menu is, it's a talk trigger. And a talk trigger is a strategic, operational choice that compels conversations. It compels conversations. Your clients cannot help themselves. They simply must tell somebody else about this special thing that you do that they didn't see coming. And every single one of us can and should build a talk trigger in our businesses because it brings us new customers for free. What we're talking about here is giving our clients an actual story to tell. We're talking about doing word of mouth on purpose instead of what we're doing right now, which is doing word of mouth on accident. Word of mouth on purpose. Now, in my new book, Talk Triggers, you can see I wasn't kidding about having alpacas on the cover. In the book, my co-author, Daniel Lemon, and I talk about the 4 requirements of a talk trigger, the 4 things that must be true for your differentiator to actually create conversations among your clients. Because not just everything you can dream up will work like this. It has to follow a pattern. And the first ingredient, the first requirement of your successful talk trigger is that it has to be remarkable. In the true definition of that word, which is worthy of remark. I don't know everybody here yet, but I do know this for sure. Nobody here has ever said, hey, let me tell you about this perfectly adequate experience I just had. We don't say that. Why? Because that is a terrible story. We don't tell terrible stories. We tell stories that are theoretically interesting to tell and theoretically interesting to hear. So whatever your talk trigger is, it has to be remarkable, worthy of the words required to pass along that story. Now, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be remarkable. There's a restaurant in Sacramento, California called Skip's Kitchen. Skip's is a very simple premise. It's a counter service restaurant. You walk to the counter. They've got a menu board. Say, I would like 2 patty melts and a chocolate shake and an onion rings. And when your food is ready, they give you a number. They bring it out to your table. We have all been to restaurants like that, except Skip's has a talk trigger. Before you pay, the person working the counter whips out a deck of cards from under the counter and fans them out face down in front of you and says, pick a card. And you select a card, and if you get a joker, your entire meal is free, whether you've ordered just for yourself or an entire soccer team. Skip's has been in business for 10 years. They have spent a grand total lifetime of $0 on advertising. Yet, there's a line to get in almost every day, and recently Skip's was named the 27th best hamburger restaurant in America by USA Today newspaper. On average, 3 people a day win this little joker gambit, but when they win, they go batshit crazy. They're like taking patty melt selfies and calling their mom, and they're crying, and a high school marching band shows up. It was like this morning's opening act. There's a guy on stilts and the whole thing. It's quite a to-do. But everybody talks about it. They tell their friends, they put reviews on Facebook and Yelp and Instagram and TripAdvisor. It is the engine of their success. And in Sacramento, despite the fact that, as you can see, the sign at Skip's Kitchen very clearly says Skip's Kitchen, in Sacramento, people call it that Joker restaurant. That's when you know you've got a talk trigger that works. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be worthy of remark. The second requirement for your talk trigger, the second ingredient for your differentiator, is that it has to be repeatable. Everybody at Skip's gets to play the Joker game. It's not just on Thursdays, it's not only at lunch, it's not only on ladies' night, it's every customer every time. It's one of the things that we do in business now. We tend to sometimes treat customers differently on purpose. We say, well, you're in our tier 1, so we're going to give you this, and tier 2 get something else. You see this when you board a plane all the time. They have 114 boarding groups now. If you're in the last boarding group and you're getting on the plane with like dry ice and dirty diapers, you're like, I don't feel special at all. Never get your bag on. We want to treat customers equally, give them all the same experience. Dr. Glenn Gorab has an incredible talk trigger that's rooted in this principle of repeatable. Glenn's an oral surgeon in Clifton, New Jersey. He's 10 miles from New York City. There are more than 1,000 oral surgeons in his market. You think you've got a lot of competition? More than 1,000 people doing the exact same thing in his market. He, however, is perhaps the most successful among them, is also the only one to never have been sued in a 34-year career. The average rate for surgeons in the US to have a legal proceeding is more than 98%. He has never been sued. And he says it's because he has the best relationship with his patients. How does that relationship get created? With his talk trigger. Here's how it works. Every Friday, his office staff gives him a list of name and phone numbers. On Saturday, he calls each of those people. He says, hi, this is Glenn. I'm your oral surgeon. I understand that you're coming to the office for the very first time next week. Before you get here, can I answer any questions? Most of us here are old enough to have had an oral surgery of some sort. Maybe you had your wisdom tooth out or extraction or root canal or what have you. And maybe if you had a good oral surgeon, they called you that night. They always ask the same 3 questions. How's it going? How's the pain? Are you bleeding to death? That's what they ask in that sequence. So if you've got a good surgeon, you may have been called, but you have never been called by a surgeon or any physician before you actually set foot in the office. It's simply not done. But why isn't it? Glenn says that every single week somebody calls him to make an appointment and says, I have to drive way out of my way. I have to pass up a dozen other oral surgeons, but I want you to be my doctor because you're the one who called my friend Shirley before she even came into the office. He says that 80% of patients mention the phone call once they walk in. That's a talk trigger. It's also a talk trigger that every single person in this room could start tomorrow if you chose to. Before you come in for our initial appointment to look at your portfolio, can I answer any questions? But yet nobody does it. Third ingredient for your differentiator, third talk trigger requirement, is that it has to be reasonable. Once we accept the premise that word of mouth is important, sometimes we think, well, geez, competition, tough. Attention's hard to come by these days. The only way we're going to break through is to do something really, really big. And so you have a client contest. Everybody put your name in a fishbowl, and one of you is going to win an island. Now, if Cody said you're going to win an island, you'd probably believe it. But most people can't pull that off. And what happens is when we give customers experiences that are too grand, it actually creates suspicion, not conversation. The story actually stops because people don't think it could be true. You don't want to give people things that are too big. It actually has the opposite effect of what you're trying to do. Talk trigger doesn't have to be big, it just has to be remarkable. Just by showing you this picture, shout it out if you know what hotel I'm talking about. Right here, DoubleTree Hotels by Hilton. DoubleTree has been giving every guest a warm chocolate chip cookie when they check in every day for 30 years. Today, as we sit here, DoubleTree will hand out 75,000 cookies in the world. Did a huge research project. I talked to hundreds of DoubleTree guests, found that 34% of them have, without being asked or prompted, told somebody else a story about that cookie in the last 30 days, which means, mathematically, today and every day, 22,500 stories are told about this cookie. Related question, my friends. When's the last time you saw a DoubleTree ad? They don't advertise much. They don't have to. The cookie is the ad, and the guests are the marketing department. That's the power of a talk trigger. And it's not an island. It's just a chocolate chip cookie. But people talk about it all over the place. Here's a tweet from Diane, who goes by @KentuckyDiane, which is bold. I presume there's more than one Diane in Kentucky, but she's like, no, I'm Kentucky Diane. It's like, okay, I don't want any trouble. Diane says, these are the best cookies in the world, which they're not. I mean, on the list of cookies given to me by a hotel, probably at the top of that list. Best cookies in the world, that's a little much. She goes on to say, I try to always stay at DoubleTree just to get them. Wow. Let's analyze this together, shall we? Here's a woman who is on the ball enough to create a Twitter account. She has figured out how to use an emoji in her handle. That requires some research. She has spelled all the words right and used correct pronunciation and punctuation, which is more than many people can do, even those in high office. And she used capital T in the DoubleTree, which is brand standard. I think we can agree that Diane is disproportionately intelligent, especially given the fact that she's from Kentucky. I live in Indiana now, so I'm constitutionally required to tell that joke. It's like it's part of the entrance exam. It's one Kentucky joke per speech. That's how it works. So Diane's on top of it. However, by her own public admission, she is making a hotel choice based on a chocolate chip cookie. How much does Diane weigh? That's a good question. Well, sir, if you're on Twitter, you could just go @KentuckyDiane. Quick question. How much do you weigh? I should do that. I should ask her. That's a good question. I don't know. I travel a lot, and when I book a hotel, I'm thinking, how close is it to the airport? Do they have tequila? How comfortable are the beds? But if the cookie is your primary decision-making criteria, fantastic. And this talk trigger creates that kind of passion in their customer base. It is the engine of their growth. The fourth requirement, the fourth ingredient for your talk trigger is that it has to be relevant. I want to make sure that we talk about this. I'm not saying let's create conversation for conversation's sake. I'm not saying that what you need to do as advisors is find a way to go viral. That's just a PR stunt. And that could work, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a word-of-mouth strategy that brings you new clients every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. We're talking about a strategy. DoubleTree's been doing the cookie thing for 30 years. Skips has been doing the Joker thing for 10 years. This isn't a stunt. This isn't a game. This is a strategy for building your practice. And one of the ways that it has shelf life like that is if your talk trigger is relevant, if it makes sense in the context of who you are and what you stand for. This is Jay Sofer. Jay is a locksmith in New York City. He is the highest rated locksmith in New York City on Yelp. He's also, I think, the third highest rated business now in all of New York City, regardless of kind of business, which is extraordinary. Also, unofficially, best hair of any locksmith. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's amazing. He's like a locksmith heartthrob. That's not his talk trigger, though. His talk trigger works like this. After he finishes rekeying your apartment or whatever he's doing, he does a full security audit of your entire premises, checks every door lock, every window lock, just to make sure everything's okay, does that for free. And then he oils every lock also for free. Remarkable. So effective. This is an actual review of Jay Sofer on Yelp. I have a consulting firm that works on these kind of issues with companies, and we would classify this in our analysis as a very strong testimonial. That is I almost want to get locked out again. Yeah, my experience was that great. Now, imagine, however, that my last two stories were reversed. Imagine Jay Sofer comes to your home to do some locksmithing, and upon completion, he says, Delilah, before I go, would you like a warm chocolate chip cookie that I made in my locksmith van? You would say, I do not want that. That is a thing that I do not want. And I'm also uncertain how you were able to put an oven in your locksmith van. Imagine you go to the DoubleTree Hotel. You check in, and they say, Mr. Baer, here's your key. But before you get to your room, would you like us to perform a thorough security audit? You would say, if that is required, I would like to leave now. It makes sense for DoubleTree because inside the DoubleTree family of companies, there's 14 brands. There's the Conrad, there's the regular Hilton, there's DoubleTree, there's Hilton Garden Inn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They each have a slightly different positioning, which is important so that they don't compete for the same guests. So they each have their own approach. DoubleTree's brand position is the warm welcome. They want to own that 7 or 8 minutes of time between when you set foot in the hotel and when you set foot in your room. They want to be really, really good at that span of time. So they put more time, money, effort into lobby design than most hotels at that price point, and they put more time, money, effort into front desk clerk training than most hotels in that price point. So the idea that they turn around and they go in an oven, each hotel has an actual oven in it, and they grab a warm chocolate chip cookie and they put it in a paper bag and they turn it and hand it to you like a Japanese tea ceremony. Warm welcome, warm cookie, warm cookie, warm welcome. It all makes sense. You see, it is relevant. And your talk trigger must be the same. I've told you the 4 ingredients that your differentiator must contain. There are also different styles of word-of-mouth strategy, different ways to accomplish this. I'm going to tell you about 4. The first one is the one we've discussed most often already, and it is talkable generosity. It's when you do something for your clients that is more generous than they expect. Free chocolate chip cookie is talkable generosity. Free security audit of your locks is also talkable generosity. It's the one that you will see most often around you because it's perhaps the easiest to conceptualize and implement in most businesses. But it is most definitely not the only way to create conversations among your clients. It's just the most oftenly seen. talk trigger style. Another option is talkable responsiveness. This is when you are faster than your clients expect you to be. This is what we use in my company, Convince and Convert. Now, sometimes some organizations just don't do this well. Valentine's Day, 2016. Amanda goes on Twitter and sends this note: guys, I'm trapped in an Amtrak elevator at Baltimore's BWI airport. Help! We can all agree that the last word of this tweet is help, yes? 205 days later, are you still in the elevator? There's been a report of a smell. I have two observations. That's not fast enough. And this could have been the greatest tweet in the history of Twitter if they just would, they had one character. At the very end here, after the question mark, the tiny skeleton emoji. Masterpiece. She was able to extricate herself MacGyver style from the elevator and survived, and this was a software error. They discovered this much later, clearly, and apologized and gave her a free trip, and everybody remained friends. But this is not a very good look for the American train system. We can all do better than this. We can be talkably better than this, even in businesses like yours. This is Paul Bogdanoff and Tim Dodges. They are CPAs. They run a firm called Bogdanoff and Dodges in Indianapolis. Local accounting firm. Small business, individual returns. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of accounting firms just like theirs, except they have chosen to create a talk trigger. They have purposely built a word-of-mouth strategy that brings them new clients every day. And it's rooted in responsiveness. They have dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of reviews on Google and every other platform that talk about their operational decision. Works like this. Paul and Tim answer every phone call and every email from clients within 5 minutes, regardless. That's their system. Now, I've had a number of accountants in my career, many of them quite good, but I have never had an accounting firm that returns my call or email within 5 minutes every time. And I bet you haven't either. And like you, if I did have that, I would absolutely tell people all the time. And you would as well. Could you do this? Absolutely. You would just have to make some operational adjustments inside your practice to do it. And it's not always Paul or Tim that gets back to somebody. Sometimes it's one of their associates. But somebody from the firm is back in touch within 5 minutes. Could you do it? Of course. We just choose not to because we take word of mouth for granted. We think that competency creates conversation, but it doesn't. Third thing, talkable usefulness. This is when you are more useful than your clients expect you to be. Now, sometimes you can do this with information. My friend Paul Manussa does this. He lives in Florida, Tallahassee specifically. He's a realtor in Tallahassee. He's an interesting realtor, though, because he only represents sellers. If you want to buy a house, he doesn't do that. He also only represents sellers between $200,000 and $400,000. That's his market, very tight. In that market segment, your results may vary, but it's generally true that people may not have a tremendous amount of upside equity in their homes. So what is often the case at that price point is sellers think, well, yeah, I could use a realtor like Joe, or maybe I could sell this sucker myself, and then I wouldn't have to pay any commission, right? That's the mental calculus that a lot of people go through. What most realtors do, and frankly, most advisors, and most accountants, and most consultants like me, is they have a website, as you all do, that essentially says these words. You may reorder the words a little bit, but it says this: "Dear website visitor, behold the awesome power of my expertise. I've been doing this for a long time. I know things that you could possibly never know. Do not try this yourself." That's what the website says. Joe's doesn't. Joe sat down and he wrote a free, downloadable, 60-page PDF all over his site. Just download it. It's called How to Sell a Home on Your Own in Florida. It's exactly that, step by step, who to call, what forms to fill out. I interviewed Joe for a book I wrote. I said, "Joe, I don't get this, man, because it seems to me like you're giving people exactly what they need to not hire you." And he said, "I know it seems like that, Jay. But what you also don't understand is that people get to about page 19. And they realize, holy crap, it's super hard to sell a house on your own. What was I thinking? I don't have time for this." It's his number one source of customers. Number one, because his name and email address and phone number on every single page. And not only does he get those people, he gets all their friends. Because if you've contemplated selling a home on your own, guess who else is contemplating the same thing? Your buddies in the same neighborhood. Like, "Hey, Jay, weren't you going to sell your house yourself and now you're working with a realtor?" Like, "Yeah, dude, don't do it. Don't even think about it. You're going to get to page 19 and realize the error of your ways. Just call Joe." It creates waves of new clients because he was talkably useful. I loved what Cody said this morning about doing female-specific workshops and seminars. Couldn't agree more. That trend is rolling across the United States. And I want to introduce you to Patrice Banks. Patrice was an engineer at DuPont, chemical engineer, super smart. However, didn't know anything about cars, which is not atypical amongst females in the United States, unfortunately. She was always concerned about taking her vehicle into a car repair place and thinking that she might get scammed in some way. So she decided to just teach herself cars. Went to night school, did a bunch of online reading, and basically taught herself cars. Then she opened a place called Girls Auto Clinic, which serves women, and every single mechanic is a female. They're called She-canics. Incredibly popular business in Philadelphia. But then she realized once she'd conquered that, what's the worst part about taking your car in? Waiting. If you have to wait for an oil change, tire rotation, the worst. It's always Jerry Springer on TV, 100% of the time. There's like really terrible donuts. There's like the 1986 edition of like Road and Track magazine. It is just not a good waiting room experience. So she decided to fix that by being talkably useful. Knocked out a wall, and now in her waiting room is what's called Clutch Beauty Bar. Pedicures, manicures, blowouts, massages. Each of those services are timed to match how long it will take to do a vehicle service. So during the oil change, here's the manicure we can do during that time. That's talkable. Incredibly useful. Let's maximize people's time. Talkable generosity. Talkable responsiveness. Talkable usefulness. And the fourth one I'm going to tell you about is talkable empathy. Now, this is one that I wouldn't have even told you about 3 years ago, because just about everybody here is old enough to remember a time when treating our clients with kindness and respect and warmth and empathy was the default. That's how we treated each other as well. That's how the world worked. That's how I was raised, and I'll bet you that's how you were raised. Kindness was the default. And now I think I can say, and you will probably agree, that we are living in an era of empathy deficit. In life, in business, certainly in politics, empathy, kindness, respect, and warmth is no longer the operating principle. As a human being and as a citizen, I'm a little disturbed by that. But as a business person and as a consultant, it is the greatest opportunity we're ever going to find. Because today, when you actually use kindness and warmth and empathy, it's actually noticeable, it's talkable, it's remarkable in a way that it wouldn't have been just a little while ago. I live in Bloomington, Indiana now, and I got a buddy there, his name is Chris Rund. Chris is a graphic designer, and maybe that's the explanation for this, or maybe he's just a bad decision maker, I'm not certain. But in his house, Chris has all white carpet, wall to wall, all white carpet, which is a bad decision. You're not Jay-Z. Like, what are you doing here? In addition to white carpet, Chris has a cat. This is not Chris's cat. This is a stock photo of a cat, but Chris does feed his cat Meow Mix brand cat food. I also have a cat. Clap your hands if you have a cat. That was weird. Average in the US is 29.6% of households have cats. Amongst advisors, it seems to be 0.3. I don't know. Advisors hate cats. I'm going to take a note of that. I'm not sure what this means. The rest of you know what a cat is, though, right? Because I could just dump out of this bit. But if everybody's clear on how cats work, we'll go ahead and continue. Interesting. I am fascinated by you people and your cat hating. That guy's so happy about hating cats, he's applauding hating cats. Wow, the vitriol is strong here in the second row. I have a cat, although that's not really the right way to say that. Thank you, ma'am. I live in a house where a cat also lives, right, is the right way to say this. Because cats don't care about us. It's strictly a roommate situation. And my cat, and Chris's cat, and the 9 of you that have cats here, will agree that cats do a thing where they strut. They don't walk, they only strut. And they're kind of walking along, and then, with no warning or explanation, and then, without even giving it a second thought, turn, go back the other way. You should do something about that. Every cat. It's a known feature. My cat does this. Chris's cat does this, except Chris, however, has the all-white carpet. This is creating staining problems on his carpet. Chris decides it'd be a great idea to send an email to the Meow Mix brand cat food company asking them to only make their food in neutral colors. Guess what he heard back? Nothing, because that's a ridiculous email to send. But Chris is, among other things, he's that guy. So now he's double pissed. He's mad about the carpet, and he's mad that they blew him off. It's like, I'm taking it public. And so he goes to their Facebook page where they have 450,000 fans. And here's the message that he left them.
Dear Meow Mix, cats throw up pretty regularly. I figured you guys would realize this, being cat experts and all. With this in mind, Why do you insist on putting dyes in your products that cause ruined carpets, furniture, etc.? When Kitty spews her half-digested meow yuck all over the place. Seriously, my cat doesn't give a shit what your product looks like in a bowl, and neither do I. What would be helpful and appreciated by legions of cat owners, I'm guessing, is if you take the worthless dyes out of your product and save us all a lot of frustration and ruined fabrics.
Chris is upset, obviously. The Meow Mix company decides to answer him on their Facebook page in front of potentially 450,000 people. Here's what they said, word for word.
Hi, Chris. All Meow Mix products are made with nutritious quality ingredients that meet the standards and specifications of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, Association of American Feed Control Officials, AAFCO, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. If you have further questions, our Consumer Affairs team will be able to help you. You can reach them at 1-877-MEOWMIX, 877-636-9649, or by visiting meowmix.com and clicking the Contact Us link at the bottom of the page.
Clap your hands if you now feel better about the Meow Mix Corporation. 3 people who work for Meow Mix. They made a classic mistake. Everything they said was factually correct. But they tried to information Chris to death. It's an emotional desert. And every time you're interacting with a client, every time somebody says, how come the market's down 800 points? We have to remember, every single time, regardless of how you're feeling, it's empathy first, information second. Because in almost every case, they don't care about the information at all. They only care about the empathy side. It happens all the time in financial services. You are besieged by information. You are in the information business. You are surrounded by numbers. And when we rely on those numbers, we think we're doing it right because we want to be factually correct. You have fiduciary responsibility to be correct, but it's actually not what they want to hear. Don't information them to death. Trust that empathy will work. And when you use empathy, it becomes talkable. Here's how much. I want to tell you about Kenlin Gretz. Kenlin owns a company outside of Green Bay called AmeriCollect. It's a medical collections company. Collections company. Not known as the most empathetic industry. Historically, collections firms just grind people down. They grind them down until they have to pay, until they're so embarrassed and so hounded and so frustrated that they simply must pay. That's how it works. Except that's not what Kenlin does. Kenlin bought this firm 20 years ago. He's increased the size of this company 452,000% since then. Their DNA, how they operate, the operational choice that they have made is ridiculously nice collections. That's how they treat people. They treat the people they call on like family. And it has an unbelievable impact, not only on those people, but on their business. In the medical collections business, the way it works is hospitals, physicians groups will take a collections firm like Kenlin's, and they'll give them half the debt. And they'll give a competing firm the other half the debt. And they give them 90 days. And they say, okay, whoever can collect the most in this 90 days, from thereafter, you're going to get all the money. It's called an A-B shootout. They do it every time. It's standard in the industry. Since Kenlin moved to the ridiculously nice collections approach, his firm has won 97% of those shootouts and has grown from a $500,000 a year company to tens of millions of dollars. And here's the part. I was out there a few weeks ago. They brought me out to talk to their team. It was one of the greatest days I've ever had as a speaker. Because of their employees, they have 250 people now. It's hard to even talk about this, it's so crazy. 60% of their team are people that they originally called to collect from. Imagine you get a call from a collections agency and you're treated with so much kindness and empathy. You're like, you know what? As soon as I pay this bill, I want to go work for those guys. Talkable empathy. Friends, there's plenty of oxygen on the high road. We just have to commit to that road. I've told you about the 4 ingredients that your differentiator must have. I've told you 4 of the different types of talk triggers that you can use. But you can't just brainstorm this. You really need to follow a process to make sure that this works, that you can put it into practice, that it will pay off in new clients. I can't get into the system today. However, and I'm only going to show this to you once, so grab a picture of it or whatever. If you send me a text message, the word triggers, plural, to the number 66866, if you send it to me by the end of the day, it will send back to you a link to a short downloadable guide, 8 pages or so, that summarizes the 6-step process for you so that each and every one of you can build a talk trigger for your practice. Because I know this works for a fact. I've been doing this over and over and over all around the world for clients. I know that this will build your business. I know that this will maximize your profit, and I absolutely want you to do it. That is my gift to you. Before I go, I want to tell you about the secret ingredient for word of mouth. And that secret ingredient is awareness. I learned this lesson myself in a very visceral way right here in Phoenix, a little over 17 years ago. I grew up in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, which is right on the border of Arizona and California. When I was in 2nd grade, a kid moved to my town from Yonkers, New York. His name was Al Parente. He was an Italian kid from New York. And like they all are, he was a super obnoxious New York Yankees fan. It comes with the territory. Despite that, Al and I became best friends. We were best friends in grade school, best friends in middle school, best friends in high school. Such good friends, in fact, that Al Parente married my wife's sister. So my best friend became my brother-in-law, which I totally recommend to you if you can socially engineer that. It makes Thanksgiving awesome. We all lived in Phoenix after school, lived right here downtown. And when I was 30 years old, Al was 30, we were all 30, Al was diagnosed with a terminal form of brain cancer, unfortunately. Had to have a bunch of brain surgeries. One of the byproducts of one of those surgeries is that he lost the power of speech. He was still okay-ish, he just couldn't talk. He recovered from that surgery, and shortly thereafter, the Arizona Diamondbacks, my baseball team, played the New York Yankees, his baseball team, right here in the World Series, played at Chase Field, which is right downtown. I got 2 tickets to Game 7 of the World Series, Diamondbacks versus Yankees. I knew there's only one person in the world I would take to that game, my brother-in-law and best friend, Al Parente. We go to the game. On the way to the game, I, Jay Baer, lose the tickets, which was not my best moment. We went to a will call, and I explained what happened and gave my ID. The good news is we had season tickets, so we were in the database, and gave them the number, and they looked it up, and they went in the back and reprinted the tickets with the old dot matrix printers we used to use. This is the actual reprint ticket they gave us. But they had to walk us into the game, you see, because some of you may remember this World Series was played right after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So security for this game was tight. You could feel it in the air. People were on edge. They brought in all kinds of extra security for this game. CIA, FBI, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, plainclothes police. They were so concerned, they welded shut all the manhole covers for a mile around the stadium. So they had to walk us in. Al and I sit down behind third base. Beginning of the game, Al pantomimes to me that he's going to go for some fresh air. Okay. He walks down the left field line, and in the corner of the stadium, there's a door that goes to an outside patio. So I watch him walk out there. I'm back in the seats. 45 minutes goes by. Thinking, where's Al? It's Game 7 of the World Series, his team versus my team. What is going on here? I should go find him. So I pop out of the seats. I walk on down here, open the door. Here's Al up against a brick wall in handcuffs. and there's a giant security guard looming over him. And I said, hey, what's going on here? And he said, are you with him? And I said, yeah, that's my brother-in-law. Boom, puts me in handcuffs. When Al tried to go back in the game, he presented his ticket, as one does. Here's the problem. Al's ticket looked exactly nothing like the ticket that every other person in the game had. And when questioned about that obvious discrepancy, Al refused to answer, which was very suspicious in the days after 9/11. This security guard was not regular Diamondback security. He was brought in special because of 9/11 in the game. He was told, this is what a ticket looks like. That's a ticket. And so I explained, oh, funny story, I lost the tickets. Nope. He's my brother-in-law. Nope, he can't talk. Nope. I'm a season ticket holder. Nope. No, 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 no. No. I'm in handcuffs. Al's in handcuffs. Hundreds of people are walking by, in and out, in and out, in and out. An inning goes by. And a second inning, a third, fourth inning, 5 innings, 2 hours. We stood there in handcuffs. Finally, a guy comes by, it's about early 30s, medium build, 5'10", kind of curly, sandy blonde hair, wearing chinos and like a fancy Diamondbacks polo shirt, like a golf shirt. And he's moving quick. He's like race walking into the game. And he catches us out of the corner of his eye and he stops. He walks back. He says, what's going on here? And I explained. He said, my name's Chris Johansson. I'm the director of group sales for the Diamondbacks. I was just going in to visit one of my groups in the skybox, but I think I can take care of this. Wait right here. Okay. He takes off running, and he runs all the way around the entire stadium, gets to the ticket office, goes in the ticket office, finds the ticket manager who's in the bowels in his office, watching the late innings of Game 7 on the television, grabs him by the hand, runs him all the way back around the entire stadium, gets back to us, it's like, ticket manager. Ticket manager takes one look at our tickets and is like, yeah, those are fine. I printed them myself. Unhandcuff us. No apology, not a word from the security guard. And off we go. And Al and I just slink back to our seats, look at each other like, did that just happen, man? That was crazy. And we get back to our seats just in time for the bottom of the 9th inning.
Floater, center field. The Diamondbacks are world champions.
Broken bat, base hit right over second. Diamondbacks unexpectedly win the game. 49,999 jubilant Diamondbacks fans. One super pissed off Yankees fan. It was crazy. I remember it like it was last night. I remember how it sounded, how it smelled, how it felt. Especially being back here in Phoenix, it always gets me. It's unbelievable. 23 days later, we lost Al. And that was really hard. It still is. And for a long time, I was really mad. I was really angry about the whole thing. Like, how dare they? They never apologized, my brother-in-law. But then I realized when I was working on this program that I had it all wrong. It's not a story about what they did to us. It's a story about what he did for us. Because if it wasn't for Chris Johansson, we'd probably still be in handcuffs. We certainly wouldn't have seen the end of the game. Right? We certainly wouldn't have had a chance to take this picture, the last picture ever of Al and I, which we took right when we got back to the seats, right before that hit. He saved us. He didn't have to do that. How many of you have a business card on it that says customer service? Raise your hand. Fewer than have cats. Chris's card didn't say that either. It said director of group sales. But he was absolutely in service to us that night. He saved us. And it's because he was aware. Service is a mindset, not a job. And it's all rooted in awareness. If you want your clients to talk about you, you have to be aware of what they expect and then do what they don't expect. Every unconventional choice is bred from awareness. If you see something, do something. Friends, the very best way to grow your practice is for your clients to do it for you. You want to maximize your profits in 2019 and beyond? This is the way to do it. Get new clients for free. Turn your clients into your greatest marketing advantage. But competency doesn't create conversations. Running a good practice isn't enough. You all run good practice. That's why you're here. They expect you to be good. Give them something they don't expect. Same is lame. Give your clients a story to tell about you. One thing. I'm asking you to do one thing different in the operations of your firm that your clients will notice and tell their friends about. And that one thing, that one choice that you make starting today, that one choice that you made at Advisors Excel World Series of Sales 2019 in Phoenix, that one choice, you're going to call it your talk trigger. Thanks so much for being here. It's an honor. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.